And now it's time for your daily dose, or morning dose, I should say, of JSNIP 4 Realist News. Keeping it real. While yes, I heard all about the Orlando incident, shooting and all that, as I mentioned before, not going to cover any of that. Done covering that. Worse to worse. This is from a Sputnik News. European Central Bank, or ECB, preparing for Brexit. Scenario as banks crumble. The ECB is getting ready to pour additional liquidity into the economy in order to stave off risks of disinvestment should the UK leave the European Union come June 23rd. The European Central Bank said they are gearing up for the UK leaving the European Union by activating swap lines to financial institutions should the Brexit trigger capital outflows in the short term. So in other words, European Central Bank, we will be activating swap lines such as we will take any and all the brunt of this economic collapse that will get started. It's already been started technically, but will really get started when UK leaves the European Union. In the latest results that I've seen from polling is that it's even higher as far as the people who want to leave, vote to leave the European Union is even higher than it was when I talked about it yesterday. So the central bank is saying we're going to pump this market up no matter what we have to do. We don't want people getting out of Dodge. Like when we had our problem in 2008, which they did too over there, but I mentioned this maybe twice. And stand by. I hear my dad on speakerphone, my wife's phone. Jay Snip's doing a video. Dad, hang up the phone. Hang on. Crikey! Can't even think straight. Hearing someone walking on their phone on speaker. After I just got to yell at the kids to get upstairs and get to bed and be quiet, because Jay Snip's got to do a video, man. So anyways, in 2008, make sure that I unmuted that. I'd hate to do the rest of this video on mute. Yeah, the old mic is unmuted. I remember telling you that there was a congressman that was on C-SPAN. I don't know who he was talking to. Some news, pundit, whatever. And he said, when this, as this started happening in September, October, whatever, he said they had to stop allowing people to, overseas especially, to remove their money from the U.S. financial system, because if they had not done that, and I don't remember the time he said, but it would have been like maybe a matter of days, that somewhere around $5 trillion would have been removed from our financial system because of people expecting the worst economic collapse to happen. So again, this is a response that people do. So if you have the UK exiting its membership in the European Union, as I said the other day, it's going to start a chain reaction of other countries doing the same thing. And again, now the whole world's going to be nervous. Oh, I got stuff invested with euros or this company and that company. They're part of the European zone, European Union. I'm getting nervous. I want to take out any investments over on that part of the world. I want to take out because I'm getting nervous. That's all it takes, right? It's always confidence, right? So they're going to do the same thing. So what they're saying right now, the ECB, we're essentially preparing for that. We got the swap lines are open. Meanwhile, major European banks are already facing declines in stock valuation, with dynamics in yield curves suggesting the market is weighing a greater possibility of the outvote in the UK. As volatility increases ahead of the June 23rd referendum, additional euro-denominated liquidity might come in handy for the European banking system, particularly so given that the ultra-accommodative monetary conditions are failing to boost either growth or inflation in the near to midterm. The ECB announced that they are ready to pour extra euro liquidity to financial institutions through the existing mechanisms of swap lines should the UK decide to leave the EU. In such a scenario, additional euros would help calm the markets and boost the already battered banking sector capitalization, staving off the risks of massive financial turmoil amidst the uncertainty of the potential effects of Britain's separation from the bloc. Quote, life won't change much after the referendum. These agreements and contracts will still be in force. Lars Rimzovics of the ECB Governing Council and also the head of Latvia's central bank said, if they'll be needed and there is some sort of shock, then of course these lines will work. We'll just keep everybody's minds at ease. We'll just print more money, buy up everything you have, keep the market rigged so that we don't have a stampede. But again, people are still going to be wanting to get out of that system, get all their investments out of that zone, the European zone. They're going to say, wow, UK just got out. Who's next? And then once you start to have a second person, then okay, is the ECB going to come out and make another statement? Well, we've got double swap. You had one swap line before. Now you've got two swap lines. We're kind of like a grocery store. When a flood of people come in, we open up some of the lines. We just call them swap lines. Meanwhile, the European banks are tumbling and crumbling as the prospect of Brexit becomes increasingly likely. During the past 2 weeks, the European financial institutions suffered the worst blow to their capitalization in 2 years, hinting at possible massive capital outflows in case of Brexit. Deutsche Bank dropped to its record lowest according to European stock market data. Considering these developments, Brexit might potentially be a worse hit to mainland Europe than to the UK itself. Either way, the upside of this is that the overheated European stock markets would cool to be more in line with the sluggish overall growth in the region. Another factor is the Bank of England being inclined to hike base rates from the current low of 0.5 by 1/4 to 0.5% shortly after the referendum to support sterling and lure investment capital back into the Albion. Given the euro's weakness, no wonder the mainland European stocks are first in line to take the blow. The collapse in the European banks' yield curves suggests Brexit is quite likely. While the discrepancy between yields on 2-year and 10-year Deutsche Bank bonds, dropped to the low of 0.5634, the EU banks, not EU, let me try that again. The EU banks are facing a mounting disinvestment pressure. Quote, the environment is fundamentally supportive of these low yields and there is nothing in sight, at least in the short term, that could trigger a trend reversal. Marius Deheim of Frankfurt branch of Skandinaviska, not even going to pronounce the rest of that. If you look at the Eurozone, you have Brexit risks that have risen recently, and that is also creating safe haven flows. In October 2013, the ECB, the Bank of England, and several other European regulators agreed the current swap lines be converted into standing agreements to prevent market volatility stemming from additional liquidity pouring into the regional economy. This time around, however, recommissioning these agreements as swap lines would in fact have more of a calming effect to the markets. The overall growth is dismal, and standing agreements do not help. There is also no point to further observe the agreement when the Bank of England is not part of the equation any longer. Earlier in June, ECB President said the regulator is prepared to do what it takes to curb the post-Brexit risks. So, again, this sounds to me like they already know there's going to be a Brexit. They're not even going to try to stop it. We're going to hold this referendum. Not that it matters, because they could stop it with the rotten rigged voting system. I personally think on the elite's timeline, this is part of the equation. they will be having this take place. Because if we're to have a one world government and system, they've got to break that euro apart first. Then any country that's not part of any bloc, simply, make them feel the pain too. If you haven't been paying attention the last 2 years, the South American countries are not doing good at all. Their economies are in very bad shape. Again, Venezuela is literally like in practically a civil war. People breaking down doors in some of these places to steal the food. I mean, it's insane over there. So they're already experiencing it. I have a feeling us in America, we're probably going to be last to feel it because we're the one that are technically doing this. Again, everything, prices, Forex, all that stuff, prices of commodities, stock market, all of it is completely controlled. And whose market controls it? The United States does. So I think they're going to make everyone feel the pain first, and then save us, as I said, save the best for last. And again, you can't have a European zone or the EU standing and working great when everything else isn't. Everybody has to feel pain. Everybody has to feel pain so that we beg our governments to fix it. So in order to feel pain, there's another piece that goes with it, which is how much time do we have to experience that pain for? What's the length of time? And for the most part, it seems like it's not going to be a little bit of time. It's going to be a long enough time that people realize or come to the conclusion this isn't going away soon. We got a major problem here. They start to get nervous. They get scared. Now they're being affected. Whatever personally happens to them, economically speaking. And the plan is to have them beg their government to fix the problem. So when the government fixes the problem, you're going to find out that their solution was not something you ever would have gone for. But since the pain is so great right now, I'll take anything just to make the pain stop. And as Lindsey Williams said a few years back, his elite friend told him the euro would go first. He was told by his elite friend, which means that was a planned event when it would happen. And the fact that finally some countries bold enough to actually leave the Eurozone tells me that the club is on schedule with whatever schedule they've got set as far as timelines go. They are set to start that process. So it'll be UK, then it'll be another country, then another one. They're going to say, okay, guys, this isn't working until practically nobody's left. So he said after the euro goes, it would come to America next. And you'd have a matter of weeks to get your financial house in order because it would come here next. So if the euro currency isn't specific to one country, right? It's specific to any of the members of the European Union, which are several countries. So when you have a nice big player like the UK leave, that's a big sign. As I said, I'm sure of it. Other countries will be following suit. At what point do they say, well, I guess we can't use the euro anymore. There's only 2 countries left. By that time, I think the euro would be already in collapse mode anyways, which would force the remaining 2 or 3 to say, we're out. We can't deal with this. The euro's being destroyed. So they'll have to figure out what's the new currency and all that, right? So I think they're just going along with their plans. One way or the other, I think if this UK exiting happens later this month, it wasn't because the people voted and finally got it right. No. It's because they wanted this to happen, the club. Whether you voted or whatever the results end up being doesn't even matter. The club has decided it's time. Because again, if they don't want it to be time, what you will find is, in a 51-49%, it was a hair-raising, almost a 50-50 vote. They squeaked it out to stay in the European Union a little bit longer, apparently. That would mean it's not time. It is not time for the UK to leave. But when I'm reading headlines like this that are already saying the ECB is ready for it, we're ready to deal with it, what looks like a probable exiting of the UK, I mean, to me, they're already telling us it's going down, it's going to happen. So we've got exactly 10 days as I'm doing this, so technically 9 days tomorrow for the referendum to take place. And I will say I can't wait to see how it goes. Take care.